Hey guys, we're here for our next session. We have Andre from Coinbase Custody, and he's going to be doing a talk about the Coinbase Oracle. I'll let him take it from here.
Hi everyone, my name is Andre. Greetings from space. Thanks for joining me this Friday night for a Coinbase Oracle workshop. Yeah, okay, awesome. You can hear me. That's great. So let me switch into the presentation mode and quickly introduce why we created Oracle in the first place before we jump to the workshop. All right, so today we have close to $1 billion worth of crypto assets pooled into various DeFi protocols. And many of those protocols rely on trusted price feeds, oracles, to perform essential functions of the protocols. So this trust creates a problem. How do we know that we can trust the owner of the private key that signs the prices? How do we know that the private key hasn't been compromised and some incorrect prices being posted in order to manipulate the protocol? And then lastly, the point that I haven't heard touched much, but how do we relieve the DeFi protocol teams from the burden of having to store private key that can potentially create a big target on their backs? Right. So at the same time, at Coinbase, we believe that our sort of essential strength are trust and security. Over the years, Coinbase built this really deep expertise in storing private keys, essentially. So currently, Coinbase stores many billions of dollars worth of crypto assets. So the question we asked ourselves is, can we reuse the same infrastructure to store the private key that signs Oracle messages? And turns out, yes, we absolutely can. And so that's what we did. We released Coinbase Oracle, which is a signed price feed that anyone can publish on chain. It means we, Coinbase, we don't publish it on chain. We give you the API with the signed messages, and then anyone can grab those messages and publish it on chain, and you don't have to trust the poster to post correct prices. So this is how the payload looks like. That is returned by the API. It has an array of messages, which essentially an ABI encoding of 4 values, which is kind is always prices. For now, timestamp of the message. Key can be something like asset ticker. And then value is a encoded a price value of that asset at that timestamp. And then it also provides an array of signatures for those messages. And by taking a message and a signature, you can recover the public key. And you can go to Coinbase Pro API docs, and in the Oracle section, you can verify that this is the public key that used to sign those messages. So you can always know that it's a valid public key, the private key that corresponds to the public key that was used to sign those messages, and that's how you can trust it. So one more thing to introduce here is Compound Open Oracle. Compound Open Oracle is a set of smart contract that Compound team created to sort of foster adoption of transparent oracles and interoperability between various sources of Oracle data. So in this workshop, we're gonna use this repo and we're gonna deploy those contracts in our local Ethereum testnet node. And then we're gonna interact with those contracts, and we're gonna publish prices from Coinbase Pro Oracle API into those smart contracts. So now I'm gonna switch to this GitHub repo. I provided a link in the chat. Let me just make sure. Okay, looks like you guys can hear me. So I posted this link at the beginning of the chat. You can click it. some things you need to have installed in order to follow along this workshop, which you need to have an open Coinbase Pro account, Node.js latest version, YAR npm, and you also need Ganache CLI in order to run a local Ethereum node. Cool. So let's jump right into it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to clone the Compound Finance Open Oracle repo. So I already have it cloned here. And we can have a quick overview of what inside of this repo. So in the contracts folder, we have 4 smart contracts. The core contracts to look at is Open Oracle price data. So this contract is used to store the data. And then there is also this DeFi price contract, which is an implementation of Open Oracle View, which is a contract used to retrieve the data. And it's really cool that there is such a separation. I wanted to highlight it because what it enables you to do is you can store a bunch of data in the Open Oracle price data contract, but then you can build your own view contract that will somehow take this data, do something with it, and then return it. So for example, you can have multiple Oracle sources posting to the Oracle price data. And then, for example, in this DeFi price implementation, you can get a median of the price of all the sources that you're interested in. So for example, here you can see the method signature is you can retrieve a median price for an asset symbol, for example, ETH, and you can specify an array of sources that you want to be medianized to calculate that price. All right, so pretty cool. Obviously you can create your own contract and do whatever you want there. So the cool thing about Coinbase Oracle is that our payload that we return from the API is compatible with Compound Open Oracle contracts. So you can just directly publish it into the smart contract. And in fact, Compound team even created a JavaScript script here that enables you to do it really easily. So let's go to our first step. First, let's do yarn install our dependencies. Okay, I already have them installed, so it's pretty quick. Then the next step is to open a Ganache CLI to start a local testnet node. We're going to do it in a separate terminal. All right, cool. Our node is running, and something that we're going to use later is we're going to need a private key that will post the data on chain. This key will be used to sign the transaction and then to pay the gas. So it needs to have some ETH in that account, which we do have here, 100 ETH. So it's great. The next step is to compile our smart contracts. Just a quick note for those who have experience working with Truffle. So here, Compound Open Oracle comes with Saddle. Saddle is a utility similar to Truffle that allows you to deploy contracts. Obviously, you can still use Truffle, but since it comes packaged with it, we're just going to use Saddle. So we're going to run compile. This will compile all of our smart contracts. Okay, it went successful. Then we're going to deploy our Open Oracle price data contract. So this is the contract where the data will actually be stored. Okay, so the contract is deployed, and there is a address here of this contract that we will use later in the next step. So the next step will be to deploy the DeFi price contract. So this is the view contract that gets the data from the storage, does something fancy with it, and return it. In our case, it will really not do anything with it. It will return it as is because we only have a single price source here. If we had multiple price sources, we could have, we could do something like median price or whatever we need there. So the first parameter is going to be the address of that previously deployed contracts. That way, the Delphi price contract knows where to get the data from. And then subsequent parameters are essentially the array of sources that this view contract will support, which this is the Coinbase Oracle public key. And you can verify it by going to the Oracle docs and looking at it here. So this is the same address. And the third parameter is essentially, it's like an anchor source. It means if we had multiple sources, then this source would be used to remove outliers that come from different sources. But in this case, we're not going to be using it because we have only one source. So let's just copy those parameters as is. And try to deploy this contract. All right, awesome. So we have the Delphi price deployed. We're also going to need this address. We're going to supply it to the poster script to publish the data. And the next step, we can actually, everything is ready for posting. We have all the smart contracts we need deployed. What we need to do now is get a Coinbase Pro API token. We will need this token to authenticate the API and get the data from it. So if you go to your Coinbase Pro account, essentially here under your username in API, you can create a new API key. You can set the permissions to view. You don't really need any other permissions. Make sure to remember or write down the passphrase. You're going to need it to authenticate. So I'm actually not going to create it now because I already created it. But once it's created, it will show you a secret. Secret is very important to remember, write down, because you're going to use it as well. It will only show it to you once. So you have to write it down from there. And then the third parameter you will need is this API key ID, which can be copied here from the list. We're then gonna open a separate terminal for the poster script. And here's the important step. So these three values that you just created, when you created the Coinbase Pro API token, you need to export them as variables into your terminal. This is just a handy way that Compound team added there to authenticate Coinbase Oracle API. Obviously, in production setting, you wouldn't do it this way, possibly, but for the workshop, it does the job. I actually already have this variables exported in my terminal, so I'm not gonna do it, but feel free to do it. And we're gonna run yarn install in a separate terminal. Yeah, feel free to ignore these TypeScript errors. They will not impact anything. So, and that's it. We're pretty much ready. Let me make sure that I have the variable exported. Okay, great, I do. And we can run the poster script. So the first parameter that the poster script takes is the address of our Delphi price contract. That's the last contract we deployed. So we can get it from this other shell. And the second parameter is the poster key, which is the private key used to sign that transaction, which we can grab from the Ganache output. And then the third parameter is the list of sources, which in our case will be the Coinbase Oracle API endpoint. All right, so let's try to submit it. Ta-da, okay, good. this was a success. We submitted transaction on chain. Now this price point is in the data contract, and we can see if we can retrieve it. So for that, we can switch back to the main terminal and run yarn run console. So this will start the saddle console. It's very similar to truffle console. It allows you to interact with the deployed smart contracts. All right, and now we can interact with our Delphi price. Make sure we do await, and then Delphi price, methods, median price, and then we say the assets we care about is ETH, and the array of sources that we want to medianize is just one. It's going to be the Coinbase Oracle public key. And then we're going to call this method. All right, awesome. So we get the price. This is an ETH price, $211.79, encoded to 6 decimal digits. And yeah, it works. We can go and try posting another data point and verify that it got submitted. Great, okay, different price. That's it. That's the end of workshop. Feel free to repeat the steps. Let me switch back. All right, guys. I hope you were able to follow along. I know it was pretty quick, but I'm happy to take any questions. Let me just read here in the chat. Let me see, why not just use Coinbase instead of a DeFi backed by Coinbase Oracle? In both cases, there is a centralized by the same entity. So, I mean, it's obviously a philosophical question to answer, but what I think is that right now, yeah, it probably doesn't really make much sense to use just a single source from Coinbase Oracle, which, by the way, it's still an improvement versus what we have right now, because at least Coinbase has a really significant investment and infrastructure unmatched by any other team to store private keys, right? So that's already a plus. But I think the ultimate vision is that for us to sort of start the trend where all significant players in the crypto space, like exchanges and other entities, can publish their own Oracle feeds, such that you can aggregate those feeds from different providers and essentially achieve decentralization this way. But I'd rather trust like 100 sources that come from reputable entities than sort of like maybe million sources that come from I don't know who. So it's sort of like hope this answers the question. So essentially the short answer is that we need other exchanges to publish Oracle feeds. Okay, let me see. What happens when there is a flash crash in the price, like happened Coinbase Pro last year? They will have liquidated all contracts. So again, the answer to that is multiple sources do outlier filtering, first at the smart contract level, but also in the Oracle implementation itself, we have price filtering implemented, and we're going to improve it as we go to make sure that essentially if flash crash happen, we're simply not going to post a new data point. We will return the old data point and not post the new one. But obviously, yeah, there is still a lot of open questions here, and we need to all work together to sort of come up with a really solid design to avoid all these problems. Because yeah, definitely valid problem, no question here. Let me see. how are you planning to expand the Oracle API? So right now, the next immediate step is to add more assets to it. So currently, we only support BTC USD and ETH USD books because they are the most liquid markets on Pro. In order to add more less liquid markets, we need to strengthen our price filtering mechanism. But this will probably happen in the next few months. The goal is to add all assets that are available on Pro right now. And then we are also actively talking to different teams in the space to see maybe what additional data points they might need, or maybe better granularity of the pricing, price data, or we essentially collecting feedback right now to see what's the most requested feature, how can we improve Oracle so it addresses needs of most teams. Let me see. So the question about flash crash is the same one. Let's see if there is anything in the chat. Can have more than one source and non-custodial. Yeah, absolutely. So like, just like I said, Coinbase itself doesn't really post. We don't publish prices on chain. Anyone can grab the signed messages and publish them on chain. And in the design of the contracts where you publish, you can require multiple sources. You can do whatever you want there, essentially. That's the reason why we don't publish it on chain, because we think that the community will know better how to use those signed messages and how to aggregate them better with other sources, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we think about it. And just while I'm waiting for more questions, just gonna, I guess, tell a story how Oracle happened at all, because we built, so me and Luke Youngblood, who also works at Coinbase, and some other folks help us. We built Oracle at an internal hackathon at Coinbase, and then we basically took several months to operationalize it and make sure it passes all the security reviews. And finally, we launched it last week, which was super exciting. Let me see. There is another question here. Why not just use API endpoints plus contract events? Why not just use API endpoints plus contract events? Yeah, I'm not sure I can fully understand this question. Maybe you can expand. Endpoints. So like, if you use API endpoints, you mean unsigned, like the regular Pro API endpoints? Yeah, I'm not sure. Plus contract events. So if we use unsigned, so like if we take unsigned prices, then somebody needs to sign them and submit, and that essentially introduced the trust issue that we covered before. So like, the key here is that we already signed the messages, so we don't have to trust the entity or person who submits them on chain. Anyone can submit it, and you can still trust it because it's signed by private key. In terms of to use events, when I just use endpoints plus contract events. Yeah, I guess feel free to DM me. I'm happy to talk further about it, because I'm not fully sure. I just don't want to sort of give an incorrect answer without understanding the question fully. Yeah, what's the economic incentive for Coinbase? Is this provided for free forever? That's a really good question. So the current main incentive for us is, so one of the key aspects of Coinbase mission is to grow the crypto economy. For example, we already integrating with some DeFi protocols. We allow investors to store money at custody, to store, for example, the protocol tokens at custody, etc. So for us, strengthening the security of the whole ecosystem, it aligns very well with our mission, essentially, of growing crypto economy, because the more protocol, the more usage of this protocol, the more opportunities for Coinbase to drive revenue through those, by integrating with those protocols. I think in the future, because we want Oracle to be sustainable project inside of Coinbase, we want to introduce some paid maybe data points or additional fields, etc. We don't know really yet how it's going to look like, but if the demand is sufficient, then we're definitely going to look into some more sophisticated data that will be paid. What do you think DeFi will look like in 5-10 years? Yeah, I don't know. It's a long answer. I mean, I think that, so to me, the most fascinating aspect of DeFi is the programmability and the essentially ability to connect protocols together in a permissionless manner. So I think we're just gonna see a bunch of products that will look like consumer products, or maybe like institutional products, but under the hood they will use a bunch of DeFi protocols,
Okay.
and essentially, but people will not know that works.
You might want to move your beer bottle though. Oh, or maybe that's just the water. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna port the audience in now.
All right, sounds good. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Sorry about that.